and detectors have high failure rates. By the way, whatever you do, do not ask AI to detect AI writing. GPT-4, 95% of the time will tell you something's AI written if you ask if it is without it actually being true. So undetectable is the first thing. Second is ubiquitous. So as an educator who's been thinking a long time about educating at scale, this is a very big deal to me because usually, and we'll talk more about equity in a second, the cool toys and cool technology toys are only accessible to people with a lot of resources, a lot of money. The most advanced AI model in the world, GPT-4, and maybe Claude 3.5, a couple others, are available for free to everyone in 169 countries around the world. Everybody in Mozambique has access to the same tool as Goldman Sachs or the Department of Defense has access to. And that's really exciting. We don't usually see, there are other equity issues to worry about, but it's unusual to see something where ubiquity kind of comes first. And I think there's a lot to think about there. And finally, transformative. So if you haven't already become convinced, and educators, we're on the cutting edge of this stuff, whether we like it or not, I hope that by the end of this talk, you will be, that this is the big deal. This is the huge one. And so I'll try and slow down, Wendy. I apologize, but I like to think of you getting lots of words per second. I'm like on automatic fast forward. But in any case, I think that this is indeed the big one. And I talk to like OpenAI once a week. I talk to Anthropic. I talk to Google, all the companies doing this stuff. And I don't take money from any of them. I just talk to them. I use their stuff. But the interesting thing about them is none of them really know anything about our field. So they don't actually have like an instruction manual on how AI can best be used to solve a problem. They had no idea when they released ChatGPT that it would completely undermine how we handle education. All of this is like completely, like we're figuring out as we go along. So there is no master plan about what these AIs can do, what they can't do. We're all kind of discovering it together for better or for worse. And education is on the very sharp edge of that particular spear. So let's just orient. I'm sure you guys know this, but just for orientation, what do we talk about when we talk about AI? Remember, I've generated all these images. If you were not in computer science, you probably thought about the Terminator prior to 2023. And everybody thinks about the Terminator. If you were in data in some way, you thought about using large data to make decisions and to analyze things. So how could Amazon take all of its data about its warehouses to cite where its next warehouse is? How could Netflix use data on movies you've watched to recommend you movies to watch next? How could Tesla use all of its data to figure out where to make a car drive? This form of AI, machine learning broadly, was all about taking large amounts of data sets and then making decisions about the future based on them. And these are really powerful. Like, companies are making a lot of money. A lot of my graduates work at these organizations. And what they all do is, they are able to take a lot of data if you have it and make predictions. And so this was a really good and very expensive and tried and true method of using AI to be successful as an organization, but had a weakness. These systems are really good at predicting the next data point in a sentence, in a sequence, but really bad at predicting the next word in a sentence. That made them hard to do, use for human language, because if you ended a sentence with the word filed, the AI didn't know whether you were filing your taxes or filing your nails. That all changed in 2017 with a paper called "Attention is All You Need" out of Google. Incidentally, everyone involved in this paper has since left the organization, and one of them, Noam, got bought back for basically $2 billion, just to give you a sense of the value of this paper. This outlined a new form of AI called the transformer with attention mechanism. This let AI pay attention not just the last word in the sentence, but the entire sentence, paragraph, page, document, etc., which let the AI make predictions about language. Okay, so you can figure out what word came next in a sentence. This kicked off the new form of AI we're all living with today, which is generative AI, and specifically large language models, which are the tools that we're going to talk about a lot, but also diffusion models and other approaches. And these systems are powered by use. The P in GPT stands for pre-trained. The AI already knows many, many things about the world. And the system, it's not your data that makes a difference. It's already been trained on a vast amount of data. So it's all about how you use these systems. Nobody knows how good this is at, say, analytical chemistry or 11th century European history unless you try it out. Because these systems are just trained on data, and it's use that discovers how they're valuable. The way these systems are trained is they actually do take all the data people can get their hands on, and I do mean all of the potential data. So the initial training set for a lot of these systems is not just like all of Wikipedia and all of PubMed and everything from the web, but also like 0.6% of the data set are things like every email sent by Enron, the disgraced and collapsed accounting fraud company, because that was available. It was also lots of Harry Potter fan fiction, if that's your thing. And out of all of this data, the AI learns the relationships between words or parts of words called tokens. So it learns that penguin and sparrow are closely related, apple and pear are closely related, but that sprint and truck aren't closely related. But not just across 2 dimensions, across thousands, millions, trillions of dimensions. So these become very large models that understand the relationship between the parts of human language. This training process, incidentally, is what's so expensive and energy consuming. To do this requires a huge amount of data, a huge amount of chips, a huge amount of time, a huge amount of money. So in any case, this is really where, like, what these systems do. And they use all of this information, this model of language they built, to do something really simple. They are the world's most expensive autocomplete system. So if I type in the best type of pet is, remember, AI does prediction. That's all AIs do. So the job of a large language model is to predict what word comes next in the sentence. So the best type of pet is, and these are actual data from GPT-3, which is one of the big large language models. And you can see the most likely next word in the sentence here is dog, 32% chance that's the next word, followed by personal, subjective, and cat. Besides telling us that dogs are objectively better than cats, I'm sorry to say it, I've got a golden retriever downstairs, they may bark at some point. It also tells us something about how these systems work, because this is probabilistic, not deterministic. What does that mean? Well, in a normal program, you'd automatically get the same answer every time. You could see the AI gives you different answers. 32% chance you get dog, 20% chance you get personal. And that means that when the AI writes something, it's different every time. So if you're using the system and it starts with, and it picks the word dog randomly, then the rest of the system has to keep building from that word dog. So it's going to end up being a really strong defense of why dogs are great pets. If it randomly selects the word subjective, then you're going to have a whole discussion about how it's a personal preference. And the AI will have a completely different attitude and approach. So you can see it's almost like a butterfly effect. Just a small change results in radically different kinds of outcomes. So knowing all of this is interesting, but turns out not really helpful, because it doesn't explain why AI is as good as it is, and it is really good. So if we dial back to when ChatGPT 3.5 came out 20 months ago, things got really weird really fast. These are the test scores of GPT 3.5, the free version of Chat we all got to experience out of nowhere a couple of years ago. And when I say, by the way, it gets 65% on the GRE qualitative, I don't mean it gets 65% right on the GRE qualitative. I mean it gets 65% of human test takers taking the test. And then GPT-4 came along, maxes out almost every other kind of test score we throw at it. And now we have 5 different frontier models, all of which get between sort of 80 to 100% on any exam that you throw at it. And actually, Claude put this document together. I'll show you some of that in a little bit. So this is like basically every test we throw at the system works really well. And the thing is also, because of this, adoption has been incredibly fast. 70% of undergraduates have used AI to do schoolwork. 70% of K-12 students, 70% of teachers, 70% of parents. This is actually data from back in January and February too. The numbers have only increased since there. So we can say, I wish we were in a world where we didn't have to work with AI or whatever we'd like, but it's too late. I mean, this is the fastest adoption of any technology we know in history, and there's no way we're dialing back. So that has created seismic changes in education. One thing, which I call the homework apocalypse, is that any educational problem you throw at this, it can do all your homework. If you don't think it can do your homework, it's probably because you're not prompting it well enough. Actually, I had an experience with my executive MBA students where one of them was, I asked them how many were getting help with AI, and they all raised their hands, and someone said, but it's really bad at pricing homework. And someone else turned to them and said, it's not bad at pricing homework. You're just a bad teacher. It's really good at pricing homework. You just have to explain how to solve the problem. So visual problems, verbal problems, I'll show you examples of all of this. The AI does all of these kind of things. And not just K-12 and college, but also post-secondary education. So this is some great data here showing you that in med school, Stanford Medical School, GPT-4 does a better job, that's on the left, than students in answering vignette questions. On the right, there's some really nice data from the University of Minnesota law school study. The grade distribution curve in blue is the grade curve of students not randomized into using GPT-4. The grade distribution curve in orange is students given it. There's no longer bad lawyers. It cuts the bottom out of the entire distribution. Everybody does a pretty good job. And you might say, okay, well, what about, education is one thing, and obviously we all care about education and about tests, but what about the real world? So I'm a professor at business school, so I've been doing a lot of studies about what happens after education, and we're finding some pretty stark results. So we did an experiment at Boston Consulting Group, the elite consulting company, and in the experiment we gave they gave us 8% of the global workforce, and we gave half of them access to GPT-4, half of them not. The people with access to GPT-4 and not were both given 18 consulting assignments to do. These are realistic assignments, analysis assignments, creativity assignments, managerial assignments, and they either got access to plain vanilla GPT-4 or not. The people who got GPT-4 access had a 40% improvement in the quality of the work instantaneously, got the work 26% done faster, and 12.5% more work done. We have another paper that just came out looking at coding, and even using the primitive coding tools from 2 years ago, programmers are 25% faster once they use AI. And that's just out of the box. To put that in context, when steam power was put into a factory in the early 1800s, it improved performance by 18 to 22%. So these are really, really large numbers. And we are finding another effect universally, which is low performers get the biggest boost. So if you're the bottom half of the skill distribution, you got a 43% improvement in performance. The top half got a 17% improvement. It's actually a little worse than this. So this is an elite consulting company. The bottom half is still really good, but we measured something called retainment, which is how much of the AI's answer people turned in as their own. And for 80% of the consultants, the only way to screw up was for them to insert any of their own thoughts or ideas into the AI's answer. As long as they just turned it in, they did well. For 80% of people, as soon as they started adding their own insights, it was viewed as worse than the AI alone. So that means the AI out of the box is already doing a better job than most people. And we're seeing it's not just in performance. We're seeing these effects across many different fields. This is in medicine. GPT-4 is rated by other physicians as giving more accurate answers than most physicians to common medical questions. And on the right, it's rated by patients as being more empathetic than the average physician. So these are pretty big impacts. And it's not just this stuff. It also turns out it matters in creativity. My fellow professors at Wharton have a really famous innovation class. They asked the students to generate 200 startup ideas. They asked GPT-4 to generate 200 startup ideas. And then they had outside judges judge them by willingness to pay. Out of the top 40 ideas, 35 came from the AI, only 5 from the humans in the room. And on the left, you can see there's that the creativity level of GPT-4 compared to humans. On the right, AI is actually hyper-persuasive as well. So if you get into a debate with the AI, you're 87% more likely to change your view than if you get into a debate with a human. So we already have beating creativity and persuasion, and let's start to do really weird things. For example, I had GPT-4 animate this chart. So hopefully you can see that. So we can start to do really, really interesting things with these systems as well. Don't worry, I'm going to show you stuff, not just talk about it, but one last couple charts really quickly. One of them is on is something we kind of universally agree with across multiple studies of this, which is whose job is affected by AI. And there's a very strong relationship between how highly paid you are, how educated you are, how creative your job is, and how much it overlaps with AI. Overlap doesn't mean replacement, but it does mean overlap. And that means jobs will change. Actually, of the list of 1,016 most displaced jobs or most overlapping jobs, it turns out business school professor is like number 22. Professors actually make up a lot of the top 30 jobs. And I think about it as like, okay, well, I like to do more research. I like teaching. I like talking to you. Maybe I can have this do grading for me. Actually, there's a bunch of papers showing it's better than TAs at grading. I'm not doing that yet. So I think we have to think about displacement or changes to the nature of jobs as a result of what AI is doing. And it's hard to know how that all affected, but the 4 least affected jobs, just in case you want to know, are professional athlete and professional dancer, so not too late for any of us, roofer, and ditch digging. Although I actually have an Amish roofer, and I asked them, and they're actually using AI to send out proposals, so maybe just ditch digging. Okay, I want to show you stuff rather than just talking about it, but before I do that, a quick dive into the question of ethics, okay? There's a lot we could talk about here about ethics and equity. Before we dive in, one thing I want to draw your attention to is a really exciting finding, actually, which is normally when we do studies of adoption of new technologies, there are deep inequities in how those technologies are adopted. There are often racial differences, socioeconomic differences. What we're finding right now, based on early surveys, is that there are not substantial gaps between, say, black and white teachers or students adopting this. There's not large socioeconomic differences. So that's kind of exciting that there is that equity there. On the other hand, right, there are other ethics concerns you might be concerned about as well. So AI is trained on billions of words without permission. We don't know the legal status of all of that. That might bother you. AI might use material you upload as training data, although I will caveat that all of the AI companies now offer privacy options. So that idea that it's always stealing your data is no longer accurate. So people tend to believe that's still true. It really isn't anymore. And then some of this data is further refined by low-wage workers often in East and West Africa who do additional screening, sometimes exposed to pretty toxic content as a result. AI content also contains biases. Those biases can be quite subtle, but for example, if you ask GPT-4 to write a letter of recommendation for a woman versus a man, the letter of recommendation for a woman is more likely to mention that they're warm, and if it's a man, it's more likely to mention that they're competent, which is a bias we see in humans as well. So there are biases in the system. They're often quite subtle. And we don't even know what all of this means for the long term for all of us. So I think we have to spend some time thinking about the implications of these systems. Now, as I said, everybody's already using this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the decision making here because the AI is already kind of in place. And I want to show you some examples of AI in schoolwork settings. But to do that, one last piece of orientation, which is the idea of frontier models. Okay, so there is a law called the scaling law in AI. It's not really a law, it's an observation. And what the scaling law tells you is that the larger your AI model is, the smarter it is. So larger means the more data that goes into it, the more expensive it is to train, the more electricity it uses. Only a few companies can train these models, but they're the smartest models. There are now 5, and I have them listed here, frontier models out there. And the best frontier models beat every other model. So you could train a specialized AI model on something, it will get beaten by a larger model, which is smarter overall. So there are some really strong reasons to use one of these frontier models if you want to do work on education. So let's start diving into some stuff. And I want to let's start doing examples. There's a lot we can do here. Hopefully you can see my screen. This is just ChatGPT. And I want to start with something. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship. So let's start with a really entrepreneurial example. I am a former classroom educator getting their MBA at Wharton. Give me 10 startup ideas. So this is a typical thing that would happen in my class. I'd ask people to do this. And now it's going to give us 10 startup ideas. And these are pretty good startup ideas. I'll ask you in chat, give me the number you want to do. Pick a number, 1 through 10, that we should explore further. 7? All right, Jessica goes first, 7. All right, so what do I do as an educator of entrepreneurs? I basically answer the question, how do I do 7? That's like my job, right? And it does a pretty good job telling me how to do 7. Not as good as coming to Wharton and getting a degree. Please continue to have people come to a degree, but a pretty good job, right? And what's great is like this is fractal. So it says things, you said to do user research, write an email from me to a potential customer asking for an interview. This is, again, something I teach in my class. And so here we go. And actually, I'm going to say, do it in Canvas. Okay. So this is the new Canvas writing method it has here. And here's the message. Now, there is something wrong with this, knowing my students, which is it doesn't show enough campus pride. And Wharton students have a lot of pride. So I can say, mention Wharton a lot more. All right, that should make it more realistic. And now it'll make the changes right here. And we can change it in other ways too, right? I can highlight stuff and say, oops, I can actually write here too. I could say, turn it into a poem, add emoji. Very helpful. So there we go. Very useful. Anyone, by the way, read any language other than English out there and on the chat? Give me your language that you read. Okay, I'm going to say, do it in German. Keep the rhymes. Let's see what happens. right? Now, they don't speak every language, right? But let's see here. You'll have to let me know because, again, I don't speak any languages, so you'll have to let me know how the German is. But the idea is, now switch it to, back to English and give me feedback. Right, and so the idea is that these systems can do all sorts of really interesting work, and it will, give me feedback on what I'm doing. And this is kind of just the beginning in some ways. These systems are incredibly powerful. I can do things like take another assignment, like a design assignment, for example, and I could say something like, look up the latest trends in sneakers, tell me what they are, then create an on-trend design and show me a photo shoot of it, right? And what this system will do is actually look up information, right? And so I saw a few talk about hallucination. AI absolutely makes stuff up. It hallucinates all the time. We'll talk more about that. But larger models hallucinate less. GPT-4 hallucinates less than GPT 3.5. And once you do things like search the internet, and you can see the citations here, you get even less hallucinations. The fact is, and we'll talk more about this, is it already hallucinates less than my students, and then it's more accurate than most of them. And so here it's now searching the information here. And now it did an analysis, and now it's going to come up with a whole design here. This is just GPT-4o. This is the paid version. The free version has some of the same features rolled out to everybody as well. So this is, and so here's the shoe, fully animated, right? So the idea that I can ask, this is 100% AI generated right here, like end to end. So the fact that I can do this kind of work is kind of crazy, right? And that we can go a lot further with it. Like these systems also do images. So let me take you a typical assignment. I actually have an assignment here. So here's an example of, let's pull one up. Okay, so I'm going to copy this over here. All right. So let me show you an example of even homework pieces, right? So I'm going to add an image. Here is, this is an actual assignment that I pulled from art history class. Describe this painting. Figures of authority are represented with visual symbols. Consider the painting. How does it convey authority? What symbols does it use, right? So we're going to get, and it can see images the way we can too. And so it's going to be able to give us answers to this question. So almost anything I kind of throw at this, it can do in a lot of different ways, right? So almost any kind of homework I can throw at it, but also things like data analysis that used to be really hard problems are solvable. So I'll cut this off. This is fun though. Let me throw a whole data set at this thing. All right, here we go. And I can say to it, figure out what this is, generate hypotheses that might work in a computer science class, test them with stats and stuff, then tell me what it all means, right? So here we go. This is actually looking at the system the way we are. It's literally opening a data set, and it's doing, it's going to actually look at the way a human would, and it's figure out what the data set is. There's no explanation. There's no data dictionary. It's just kind of running with this. And now it's going to actually do all the analysis we need to make this happen. And don't worry, there's a lot more demos I want to show you that get even cooler than this if you stick around for a few more minutes. But here, it's going to run the analysis for us and give us the information from this here. Really good question, domain knowledge, Jose. I promise I'll get to that in a moment. We'll let this write this up. And again, there's a lot more stuff I want to show you here, but this is just a simple example. This is all within GPT-4o. And what we'll see here is it's going to do the trend analysis. It's displaying the mean compute time. Would I like to do statistical testing? Sure. Also do some graphs that are cool, right? Okay, so now it's going to do some graphs and give us all the results, and we'll get all the answers from it here. So, and let's see what happens. Okay, so the idea is that I can use these systems to do all sorts of really interesting work, which I will show you as well too. Here, let's get the results of the graph, hopefully in a second. We will find out. There we go. Here's our graphs. And it will do all the stats and other analysis, and it's explain what the visualization is. There's so much more to show you. Okay, we're gonna come back to this, but I wanna pick up a thread for a second here in the presentation piece. So I wanna talk a little bit about writing and cheating and meaning, and then we'll come back and I promise to do even cooler things. Okay, so our key to a lot of our research is written work. Written work is used in all sorts of ways, but basically The amount of work you write is your thoughtfulness. The lack of errors is your care. The quality of the work is your ability. And we assume that tasks like writing show mastery. They don't anymore, right? Writing is important. Cheating has always been common, by the way. That graph shows you the percent of people who are copying their homework at Rutgers over time. And what you could see is like people have always been cheating. We just could pretend we could ignore it or not catch it. But that is an example of like we could ignore it right now, but now we can't anymore. And a lot of you probably think, oh, I can detect AI cheating. And that was true with like ChatGPT 3.5, the free version that came out a while ago. So if I give it a task and just say, write a report on why we should adopt a structured interview process and just paste that in as a prompt, what I get is distinctly AI writing that all the AI detectors light up for. Like it feels like AI writing, you'll know it's AI writing, and it feels like that. But if I move up to a better model like GPT-4 and I do the same prompt, I get something that is much less AI writing. It's better. The AI detector is unsure about whether it's AI or not. But if I just do a slightly better prompt, right? You're an expert communicator who explains complex concepts. Write a report on why we should adopt a structured interview process while hiring. If I do that, AI detectors don't work at all, and it feels like real writing. And actually, one of my assignments for my students is always cheat with AI and write something that AI detectors can't detect, and they do a pretty good job doing that here. So like this is a pretty, like you can get this stuff just out of the box. And if you think you're detecting AI writing, you're not, right? Actually, in studies, teachers are no better than chance at detecting good AI writing. Okay, so now the problem is all your students are doing this, and if they're just using AI out of the box without any guidance at all, they're not getting any value. My colleagues at Wharton did this great study in Turkey looking at math education, and they found that if you gave students GPT-4, they basically used it to do their homework. They thought they learned something, but they did worse on tests. However, a small amount of changes to the curriculum made it so there was more value from AI, but you can't just tell people to use AI. So this was the syllabus I originally went viral for a while ago on AI use. Is this one where I said, you have to, if you use AI, you have to tell me, you have to put the minimum work in. That isn't true anymore. AI is better than my students. I teach at a good school. My students are quite smart, but the AI is better than their work. So you can't just say use AI and go at it because your students are not going to learn anything. But despite all this problem, in the world of ubiquitous AI, baseline knowledge matters more than ever. We really need people to understand the world that they're in. They have to have enough knowledge to operate in it. Expertise matters more than ever. They have to be able to work together with with an AI and understand, become an expert. And training matters more than ever. They need to be able to do a job. All of that means education matters more than ever. So how do you deal with AI in the classroom? Well, first, you go back to what you want students to learn, and then you decide policies from there. All right. And you really have the idea of just permitting use is no longer good. You have to either ban or transform use, basically. So option one is you return to the basics and you essentially work your way around AI. We did this with calculators in the 70s. That's what those things are. We can do this again if we need to. And you can rely on old solid pedagogy techniques. Frequent low stakes testing is fine, right? Blue books and in-class assignments, active discussion. We have so much research that shows all of this works that this is a really useful kind of tool for educators to work with here, right? And so this kind of example is of just going back to the basics. You can absolutely do this. And some classes, like English composition, may need to be doing this. Now, that doesn't mean AI doesn't have value even in a classroom when you're banning AI use, because teachers are actually finding AI to be incredibly useful in their kind of work. So if you look at them, instructors across education levels, help with ideas, instructional materials, worksheets, tests and quizzes, all things AI is quite good at doing. I will point out that the fourth thing is detecting student cheating and plagiarizing. That is a terrible way of using AI systems. And so remember, do not use AI to detect AI use. Now, there's a really interesting paper here that has shown, it's a qualitative paper, but it shows that the benefits of AI come from teachers who use this stuff called as a co-intelligence. That's the whole thing in my book, right? The idea that you interact with the AI. So if you just ask for outputs, give me this, you get less value than if you work back and forth with the system. So I want to show you an example of that in operation. Let's switch over to Claude here. And I'm going to ask Claude, let's do this. How about this? I want, to teach about the forgetting curve. in education, give me 10, or let's do 5 creative ideas. So I want to show you how the input-output process works here. Okay, so now it's going to give us 5 creative ideas. And I can say, now what you want to do with these systems to really work like co-intelligence is you push back and forth. So you can say things like, actually, 4 isn't sophisticated enough. And unlike everything else in my life, this will agree with me 100%, which I always like. So now it's going to make it more sophisticated, right? We'll get a more sophisticated version, and it's decided to write up a more complicated thing here, right? I could say things like, maybe think about how to do it as an exercise with typical class material, right? And so now it's going to rewrite it with me. So this working back and forth with the system of using my own expertise and the AI together is a really useful way to think about these systems. And we can go kind of further, right? We can do things like, what are some misconceptions to worry about? So the idea is I'm using my expertise and bringing AI to the table as a co-intelligence to think about these kind of problems and the solutions. And if I know something about the topic, I could do a really good job here getting help. And then, of course, we can do something else. We could say, like, create an interactive tool that explains the forgetting curve. And I could hit enter, and it will code up one for me here. So the idea is that I now have the ability to do very different things than I could do before, right? So here I am building a new kind of system out, and I can work with these systems interactively to get kind of good results. I can use this as a tool to help me. Things like Claude are here, and this is cool. I created a little interactive tool here, and I actually can change these numbers and update the graph and use this as a tool for teaching. And I could also say something like, give it a, let's say, New York theme, right? And it will change it around here to add a New York City theme and New York City landmarks. So the idea is I can work with this system and actually make it fit what I do even better, and get deeper with it. So we'll let that continue to build here. We can check back in a second. But want to get through a few more things here as well. So one of the, so it also is a really good job of doing things like tests and creating material for you. We have, by the way, there's a whole bunch of, I'll put it in here, but let's see here. I think it's under more useful things.org. We have all our free prompts there in case you want any of them. They're all Creative Commons. You can modify them as you need to. But, we include these prompts for creating low stakes tests based on this. There's all kinds of kind of neat things you can do. And by the way, the system as a default doesn't do this well because it doesn't actually know that the test answers should all be different from each other and there should never be an all of the above option. So you have to put your own sort of spin into this. And by the way, teachers who hate AI grow to like AI once they've used it. So a lot of this is about using these systems enough to get an understanding of what they're good or bad at. So that's the ban and use it to support you option. We can go deeper. We can talk about how you can use AI for transformation. So my classes are 100% AI based. Like everything people do is with AI. You can do this kind of thing too. Now the problem is the student default in using AI is to ask for answers, which doesn't provide learning, and to get information in the most comfortable way. So I don't know about you, my students have stopped raising hands as much in class because they say that they'd rather just ask the AI for an answer, which I think is, like, why would you want to be uncomfortable in class when the AI can explain it like you're 10, even though it's not a great educational technique? So we know students are using AI all the time to get explanations and discoveries, but it's not great because it just tells them answers. So we've been building systems like tutors and tools. This is a tutor prompt. Again, all of that is universal. I gave you a link to all of this stuff. And if the students use this prompt, it actually pushes them to do questions. So it ends up pushing them on a problem rather than just giving them an answer. And we've been coming up with all of these tools at Wharton about how to do this. So for example, this is a GPT. Let me see if I can pull it up easily. Hold on. Where are you, GPT? Hold on as I try and get the link going here. Everything's a little slow today. Okay, I'll try and copy that over. Let me see if I can do this more easily. One moment as I try and figure that out. Okay, hold on. I think I can copy this over to show you. Actually, I can just do it this way. Let's make it the easy way. Okay, so here's ChatGPT, and we built all of these tools. So here's an example. Here is AI for practicing negotiation. So I can literally click on this and I can say, help me practice a negotiation. And I could say, I am an undergrad art student who has never studied this. And the system is going to give us a bunch of scenarios to pick. Pick which one you want, by the way, 1, 2, or 3 on the list. Just type it into chat. 1, 2, or 3. All right, I see a lot of 2s. Okay, I'm gonna just pick 2. Now, normally I've had to build simulations. I've been building simulations for a long time. This took a lot of effort. Now the AI just does it for you. So now it's going to actually set up an entire negotiation back and forth. And we're gonna have a simulated experience, between us here. So here's the role play. And now I can go back and say, I like your work. We're offering a 40% commission on sales. Give me $1. Give me that, right? That's probably a bad way to run a negotiation. It sounds like you're shifting gears. Well, I can't give you $1 million. It's going to give me feedback on this, right? And like the fact is, I can use these systems. We've been building all of these kind of AI tools, practicing negotiator. This one actually builds simulations for you. We have ones that will actually help explain issues to you and all sorts of things. I'll see if I have more time to get to them later. And I have a few minutes left before questions. So, but all of those are in the link that I gave you, more useful things. You'll see all the prompts there. And you can make your own technology with these sets of things. The point about this is that anyone can make and share these kinds of tools. So the prompt I just showed you, right here, the simulator, let's go back to the actual simulation. Here is our negotiation simulator. If you actually look at the simulator, and again, all of this is freely available for anyone who wants to use it. This is a GPT, and it's written in plain English, right? It just says, here's what you do: set up the role play, set up the scene, begin the role play. This was written by my wife, the co-director of the AI lab. She has no coding experience. She's probably one of the best prompt engineers on the planet. Google uses her prompts as the gold standard for tutoring. And she has a doctorate in education. It turns out being an educator makes you really good at using AI, because AI is like talking or working with a teacher to go back and forth as a teacher with the student to figure out what it's good or bad at. And so these systems are increasingly feeling human. Just to give you another example of sort of where the future is heading with this and human feeling. This is, let me pull it up here. This, if you haven't played with it, I strongly recommend. This is Notebook LLM, which is a free Google product. And let me pull up the notebook for you. And here's, this one here. So I gave this notebook, my book, and my entire book, and all of my blog posts. And I want to show you what I can do with it. So here is, I can actually feed that all in and have it created and turn it into a podcast. So just 1 second of listening to the podcast. I promise it's worth it.
Okay, so today,
100% AI generated, just from the text of my book.
AI, but not like the robot overlords stuff you see everywhere.
Right.
We're talking like how different this all is and like what it means for you and me like right now.
Yeah, and thankfully we have Ethan Mollick's book, Co-Intelligence Living and Working with AI, to guide us.
Oh, and some of his Substack stuff too, right?
Yeah.
One useful thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that book, man, it really flipped my thinking on AI, honestly. Like one
So
big
this is
thing
100% AI
large
generated,
language
right?
models. Keep in the loop. That's
right.
key.
And by the way, it doesn't just do that. It creates study guides, other material. And this is just a one-off thing. If you haven't tried Notebook LM, strongly recommend giving this a shot. But I mean, even here, we're sort of in the beginning days of these sorts of technologies. If you haven't tried it, this is just advanced voice mode on GPT-4. So I want to show you an example of this here. Hey, I want to learn something about how to do a negotiation. Can you role play one or help me?
Absolutely, I can help with that. Let's set up a scenario. Imagine...
Actually, would you mind doing it like a vampire?
Of course, my dear. Let us imagine you are a mortal entrepreneur.
Excellent. Maybe switch it around to a pirate.
Arr, matey. Now ye be a swashbuckling entrepreneur.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was very cute. Thanks.
So much fun.
You're welcome, matey. Glad.
Okay, so the idea is that if we can have systems we can chat to that can interact with us in this kind of way. That was just ChatGPT 4, the $20 version, just on your phone. That's the ChatGPT app, right? Does this by default for everybody. So these systems are getting increasingly powerful. We need to think about how we're going to use them. There's so much more I could show you, but let's just talk about a few last things. What now? Okay, so 3 things to know as an educator. 1, there's no secret instruction manual. There's no manual out there. Nobody's sitting, like OpenAI is not sitting on a guide on how to use AI for education. The second is working with AI feels like teaching. If you're good at teaching, and you guys are good at teaching, you'll be good at using AI. And third is you know your local environment better than everybody else. That means that you have a system that you can use. You don't have to wait for ed tech to show you how to do it. You can use this yourself, right? And so every instructor now is a coder. And I think we're going to figure out on our side how to figure out how to use this in schools. It's like going to be very disruptive, and we can talk more about that. But I think the real problem for me is what happens after school, because we teach people to be generalists, and then they go work for a company, and they become specialists, right? Or they go get a professional education, and they do that through apprenticeship. But apprenticeship just broke this summer. Because when I talk to people, all the students doing internships are all using AI to do their internships, so they're not learning anything. And all of the middle managers who'd be teaching the interns have just turned to AI to get their work done because it's easier than working with an intern. So we have a larger problem in education than what's actually happening in the universities. It's what do we do to train people afterwards? And I think we're in the early days of that. One last little word of warning or discussion here. So I mentioned the scaling law, that AI is getting better on a regular basis. Right? And the quote here is actually one from Sam Altman, who echoes what I hear from a lot of insiders in the AI world, which is they think they can scale all the way to beyond human intelligence in the next 5 to 6 years by just building bigger models. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I think it's something for us to think about and be concerned about. And I think we need to start preparing for future scenarios in education, especially because we don't know where things are heading right now. So I think if you aren't using AI a lot, you might be thinking about AI being static, like nothing is going to happen in the future. A lot of people worry at AGI, the idea of a machine that's better than a human at everything. And again, that's the explicit goal of the AI companies. But I also think we need to be in a world where this is getting better, exponentially, or it's the 8th percentile of BCG consultants. Next year is the 85th, 90th, 95th. We have no idea. So we're in the early days of a real revolution. And it's also important to know AI does a lot of stuff that feels like things a machine couldn't do, like creative, interesting stuff. So I actually asked GPT, I used 2 different tools to do this. I'll give you guys links to it, to create videos of people standing with futuristic sewing machines just for fun. This is 100% AI generated, right? I just thought it was entertaining to do. And so like the fact that I can do creative and interesting visual work, that this looks like actual pieces of real material, like I think we're in a really interesting new place to think about the world. So my piece of advice, educators need to experiment with AI and we need to share what we do. We have to be trying out everything and we have to learn. Like if you're bouncing off of things, right? You can run into you can run into all sorts of issues, but you push through. You use it. You're an educator. You will figure out how to use it to be effective. And most importantly, we need to figure out how to share what we learn. I really worry that we're in a position where educators are individually innovating, but not sharing. We have to be on the cutting edge of how to make this stuff operate. And most importantly, this is the worst AI you're ever going to use. Everything I'm showing you is super primitive. We have to figure out how to adapt to a ever-changing world. So I know I spoke quickly, but I promised to end with 15 minutes for questions. So I'm going to take those questions here and do more demos as needed. And there's a lot more we could talk about, but thank you guys very much. I hope you found this interesting. And so I have a bunch of open questions. Feel free to use the question space if you want to here. And let's see here. Most of these seem to be Pearson stuff. Okay. All right. So I'll just answer a bunch of questions for you all after another about testing. So on the SAT score side, what I was showing you before, let me just go back and I'll show you the testing stuff I was showing you. So on the testing side, basically there isn't a test that the AI can't do at this point. All right. So almost any test you throw at these systems, they can successfully do. So I don't know what we feel about that, but that's kind of where the situation is. Please put things into questions if you have them. For teaching language, okay. So that's a really interesting question. We can go back to this, and it's actually not this language is not that great at every foreign language, but I can say to it, hey, can you teach me some German?
Absolutely. Let's start with some basics. How about greetings? In German, hello is hallo, and goodbye is auf Wiedersehen. Please is bitte, and
so you can see it's good at languages, but it's not necessarily good at being an instructor. That's not how I would start teaching, right? So you have to bring your own knowledge to the table. generally these systems are better at the more common languages are used more often. So they're very good at English, they're good at Chinese, they're good at French, they're good at German. They can do passable Finnish. Actually, they do pretty good Elvish, but only Sindarian, if there's any real nerds in the room. But they're not as good at less common language, right? So I think, by the way, use the answer thing if you don't mind, the question answer thing, if you don't mind using that. Okay, so let's see. What would you say is the larger the model, the higher the compute cost? Yes. So you shouldn't be building your own model at this point, but model price is increasing on a regular basis because as models get larger, they require more data, more compute. But there's a bunch of clever techniques. No one's bothered using any of the techniques yet that make models cheaper because it's just a race to build the biggest, fastest model that people can. So what's actually happening right now is these 5 companies that are leading in AI all really believe they can achieve superintelligence, and they're all racing to get there first. And they're just scaling to get there. There are a lot of things that can make the AIs more efficient, use less water, use less energy. Nobody cares until they hit a plateau in the ability of these underlying systems. So does GPT-4 adapt to a person's writing style over time? That's a good question. The answer is basically no. These systems don't really learn about you. There is sort of a little caveat, which is that GPT-4, ChatGPT has an option here. Let me see if I can pull it up to show you. I'm going to actually show you 2 things in this model that are useful to know about. They must have moved the little menu here. Let me find it. Okay, here's the menu. So if I go to the menu and I go to settings, I actually have a couple options here. One of those is data controls, by the way. And if I turn this off, then it doesn't store my data and no one can train on my data. So that's one way to get privacy on this. And then if I actually look at personalization, there's an option to turn on memory, and then the AI starts to remember things about me, and then it does have some memory, but otherwise it's not learning from me. Each session is unique in each case. Someone asked about uses for grading. But we'll just have to do some other fun stuff while we wait. Actually, let me show you one really cool thing. I know this is not actually as relevant, but like you can actually throw in an entire academic paper into these things. Let me see if I can do that easily for us here. And like it will actually, I'll show you this one. This is neat. So this is Google's, this is Gemini, which can hold massive amounts of information. And I actually gave it, in this case, all of my, let me see if I can find this for you. I gave it all of my academic research I've ever written. And I asked the AI, here's all my academic research. And I said, create a tenure statement on it. And it actually created a tenure statement, finding themes and quotes across everything I've ever written.
Oh my God.
And then I'm like, great, expand into a full document. And now it expands into a full document. This actually came up with the same things I did for my tenure statement. So you can fill massive amounts of data into these systems. And it can work with those in kind of a really big, impressive way. So pretty interesting here. So, okay, let's see. Here, okay, what's next? Active learning, okay. Let's see here. You said that you're not sure recording for, come on. Solid pedagogy with online courses. Online courses are tough, right? Online courses are kind of a big deal. By the way, another just example of this at work is you actually can show it entire videos. I'll just show you this really quickly. This can fit entire videos into memory. Like here's an entire walkthrough of the Museum of Natural History. I could say, what would a kid think at each moment? And it actually gives me, it has theory of mind. It can actually tell me what happens at each moment and give me reactions to each of them, which I think is pretty neat. Okay, so sorry, back to the questions. Let's see here. I don't know anything about the Pearson study tool. I'm sorry, Magdalena. Is it legal to use AI to check student papers for AI-generated content? AI cannot check for student content. Never ask an AI system to tell you if something is AI created. It does not know. It has no information about that. It also will not do a good job telling you how to use AI or what the implications of AI are or what the future of AI are. The system doesn't work for those things. So never ask an AI to do that. I see a question about energy implications. It's a really good question. So right now, there 3 Mile Island's reactor 2 is being brought back online to power data centers. Right now, data centers are 1% of US power. And maybe AI is a tenth of that. But if this grows by becoming as useful as it is, it will use ever more power. Now, the question is what your comparison is. An average AI query uses 10 to 100 times as much power as a Google query, but 1,000 times or 10,000 times less carbon emitted than a person doing the same amount of work. So I think there will be advanced in energy efficiency, but I think it's something we have to pay attention to a lot in the future. AI is not training on itself. So Dodd wrote, as AI training on the answers it generates? No. At this point, most of the AI systems, they don't really care. I mean, they will train on your data, but you can turn that off. I showed you before. All of the systems have privacy options now, and you don't have to worry about training on your data as much if you use them. I don't trust any of the AI tools. I've talked to all the AI companies, Turnitin and elsewhere, and I don't believe any of them. Like, the evidence is that they don't work very well. Students could easily change the answers with a little bit of work. I don't know if you've ever seen, but there's a GPT store. And if you look at the GPT store on ChatGPT, hopefully this will load up. Let's see if it does in a second. Otherwise, I'll try and reload here. And again, there's only so much we can do in an hour for showing you time. Okay, if you take a look at this, what are the most popular AI writing tools? They're all things that are designed to obscure the fact that you use GPT-4. So you run it through all of these humanizer systems, and it makes it so it's impossible to tell what's AI written and what isn't. So AI detections you cannot use because they have high false positive rates against people who don't speak English as their native language, and they're black boxes. I cannot emphasize enough, you should not be using AI detectors. They are not reliable, and you're going to destroy people's lives. And the systems don't work. If it matters to you, then what you need to be doing is thinking about using in-class assessment to supplement the out-of-class material, right? By the way, all these AI systems can look at pictures of the world. Like, you think proctoring is safe. I can take a photo of something or have it listen in or just watch the screen and tell me what's going on. I actually mocked up a little demo for Harvard Business School that where I was showing that you can actually have it read a case and then listen to the teacher talking. And whenever they stop talking, the AI can tell you the smartest thing you could say at that moment to impress the class. Cheating is going to be almost impossible to detect in the near future as well. So, okay, let's see, other questions here. Agents. Okay, agents are a really interesting question. Agents are AI systems given autonomy to go and pursue their own goals. I want to show you a fun example of an AI agent because I think it's a good illustration. Let me pull up one here for you. Oh, by the way, on deepfakes, just to show you, you can now deepfake anything. This is Trump and Obama on dirt bikes. So don't trust anything you see ever again. You can just do this on demand now. Anyway, let me show you what I was going to talk to you about. What was I just mentioning? I was mentioning, okay. I was just about to talk about, now I'm losing my train of thought because of the dirt bike issue. Let me see. Oh, okay. Yes, I wanted to show you agents. Okay, so agents are autonomous AI systems that can operate on their own. And there's a lot to talk about here. But this is called Devin. Devin is an early AI agent. And what you do is you give it a goal. Write a paper. It will go ahead and do the research, put the paper together, and write the code, do all the work for you. My favorite example of this, I asked Devin to go into Reddit and to take requests to build websites. It did all the research about what sites to go to, what rules to follow. Then it asked me, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to fill out CAPTCHAs. Will you fill out the CAPTCHA for me? So my sole contribution was proving it wasn't an AI. And then it posted this ad while I wasn't watching, and it proposed that it would do work for you for $50 to $100 an hour. I did not tell it to charge. It just spontaneously decided to charge. And when I checked back in an hour or two later, it was interacting with people, trying to write a proposal for them, and trying to figure out how to use Stripe for payments. Wouldn't have gotten all the way there. But this idea of autonomous systems that are doing work for you without you knowing it is absolutely something where AI is heading right now. Okay, let's talk about other stuff here. Let's see. I see a lot of stuff about cheating, really good discussion there. And so let's see, is there anything else in the chat? I have like 2 or 3 more minutes. Okay, so one more time on course books. Okay, so I think a lot of the, mental health. So we only have early data on the mental health side for students. The early data is that the earlier AI models were not very good at would give bad mental health advice. The current models are pretty solid. They actually there's a article suggesting suicide reduction as an outcome of working with AI chatbots. We don't have a lot of data yet. Although my favorite story about this, I talked to Marty Seligman, who's a retired emeritus professor from Wharton. He invented positive psychology, one of the most famous therapists alive today. He uses GPT-4 for any psychological advice people give him. He says it's a better therapist than him. So I don't know if that's true or not, but this idea of AI's companion as therapists is something I think we're going to see a lot more of in the near future as well. Okay, so let's see what else is here. By the way, if you want to do something like work with, Claude and Canvas, the other way to do that is I just will open up Claude here, and I can just tell Claude, let's open a new window, or actually, we'll get even better. Let's go to use GPT-4, a 1 preview, which is the most advanced model, and I could say, come up with a system that will take Canvas, grade papers, grade them, and then upload the results after asking for a rubric. Okay, and I'm just going to tell it to do this, and it's going to think, this model does thinking, is another topic we could talk about a lot, that's interesting. And it's going to actually think about how to build this. I actually don't code in Python. I do hundreds of Python programs a week because the AI does it. Notice it's looking at the Canvas API, it's looking at it's putting all this material, putting an integration with tools. Now it's putting in it's building a grading engine for us. It's talking about how all of this is going to work and this technology stack. And now we can actually tell it to build this thing here. So, okay, let's just say, build all the code. And it won't be perfect at this point, but the goal is to make it more perfect in the future. So you'll see us doing more thinking again about how to have privacy guidelines and everything else. And now it will hopefully create this here. So here it's now telling us exactly what to do. If you can't code, you can code now. The AI will teach you how to do this, define the grading rubric. So you're asking me how to use it with Canvas, just ask it and to build the material for you. And you're in pretty good shape about how to do that. Okay, good. I think, unfortunately, I am out of time. I'll put the information again. oneusefulthing.org is my sort of free blog on this stuff. And I have a whole bunch of articles on this material. You can look at moreusefulthings.org has all of the free resources available. So thank you guys very much. I hope that you thought this was interesting. And I hope this is fun. We have to figure this out together, folks. Like, no one's going to do it for us. As educators, we need to figure out how to use this technology to accomplish the long-term dreams of education and not ignore its downsides, but embrace its upsides. So agencies in our hands, we have to make some decisions together. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Ethan, for your time. I know there's tons of thank yous going out in the chat right now, and look at all these reactions. I love it. Thank you again. And thank you everyone for joining us. As a reminder, you will have a chance to win a copy of Ethan's book if you fill out that feedback survey that'll pop up at the end. So please take just a moment to fill that out for us. This is our first EdTech Symposium, and we do want to continue to do this. So we'd love your feedback so we can continue to make this event bigger and better. Also, we will be sharing the available recordings and all these lovely sketches that Len did for us in a follow-up email. So be on the lookout for that in the coming days. And just another note on that feedback survey, make sure you complete it by Friday evening for your chance to win Ethan's book, because we'll be announcing that on Monday. And then if you have any other additional questions or want any more information about Pearson's products and our AI tools, just please let us know. You can put a little note in that survey as well. And just thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at next year's symposium.